Well, another topic that we've been talking about, including when you're talking about conservative media, hundreds of corporations, including Starbucks, Amazon, and Netflix, signed onto a letter calling election reform laws a threat to our democracy. Well, our next guest is fighting back against companies the companies that are caving to the culture of wokeness. And she's also calling for conservatives to boycott these corporations because they don't stand for their values. Joining us now to discuss is senior fellow of the American Conservative Union, Mercedes Schlapp. Mercedes, great to see you today.
Thank you for having me.
So in terms of the corporations that are not signing on, I know the New York Times ran this two-page spread, an ad of all the companies and the CEOs that were signing on to this, calling out those CEOs and companies that were withstanding this and not signing on. So you're offering some support for those companies.
That's right. We have to understand that there is a leftist pressure campaign. I'd call it a maximum pressure campaign to ensure that these corporations sign on to opposing these election integrity laws in states like Georgia. So what you're finding is that they're getting these calls, they're getting these calls, and they're basically saying, look, you better sign on or else. And so we really believe that what these corporations are missing is the fact that half of their customer base are people who don't believe in these woke corporations. They do actually believe that we should require voting IDs to vote in the same way that you would have to give an ID when you go and buy an airline ticket, or you go show your ID to get on a plane, or when you get a COVID vaccine, or you go to the doctor's appointment. So this is complete common sense election integrity reforms that we support and that so many Americans support, yet these corporations are caving in to this socialist far left agenda that their primary goal is to create a one-party system and ensure that their party wins and not allow for free and fair elections, which is what we're calling for.
You know, Mercedes, everything's gotten so political. I was curious how you feel about this, because I like going to ChickfilA because they're run really well. You go in and take care of you. They're polite. It's run so beautifully, and I have teenage daughters, so you got to feed them. And then now I don't care that the CEO is conservative. I don't care. I like the way the business is run. Now I like Patagonia clothing. Turns out they're very liberal. I just want the products. At what point have we gotten, do you like that, or do you think they should just stop being so political and do what they do?
Look, what I think they need to focus on primarily, and this is something that we actually worked with many of these corporations on ensuring that we would have deregulation, lower taxes, even lower corporate taxes, that these companies benefited so that more Americans can have jobs, so that there's more investment in our American communities and our nation can prosper. However, when they're getting involved in what you would call these election integrity fights that are very partisan issues, that should be really, the focus should be on these government officials that are the ones representing the people, and they're the ones that need to come up with these laws. That is just, to me, they've crossed the line. It's gone way too far with these corporations. And they also need to recognize that if they're getting pressured from the left, they're going to get pressured from the right, because we represent millions of Americans who share exactly your mentality, which is, I just want to buy a product. I just want to drink a Diet Coke, but I don't want to drink a woke Coke. That's not what they want. They want to make sure that they're able to get their products that they need, feed their children with a ChickfilA, which personally I just love their chicken nuggets, and also ensure that they don't get involved in the politics. And we're seeing that in the polling as well. The fact is that Americans don't want these companies to become overly politicized, the majority of Americans. So I think that they've played their hand, they've gone too far, and what they're doing at the end of the day is that they're hurting minority communities. Like we've seen Major League Baseball leaving Atlanta in order to go to Denver, Colorado, which actually has very similar voting laws to Georgia. For what? To make a point?
But
It's
Mercedes,
just disgraceful corporations are doing, and we're going to hold them accountable.
It seems like a lot of it is misinformation, or the leaders of these companies, these CEOs, not even bothering to try to be educated about what's really in the voter integrity laws across the different states. So how do you counter that when it seems they're only concerned about their reputation on social media and what anyone thinks of them at any given moment, which, as we all know, changes, depending on what anyone says. How do you counter that and try to educate them?
Heather, that's a great point. I think that there is a misinformation campaign. You could hear the CEO from Delta talk about the election reform laws of Georgia and absolutely did not understand what were in those laws by basically saying that, you couldn't give water standing in line, which is it's not accurate. So I think the key for us, and that's why we feel that it's important now that we've launched the Center to Protect Voters and Their Voices, that we meet with these organizations to explain and go into detail what these election laws are, what they're doing, why we feel strongly that we can't have just simply unsolicited ballots that are going to bad addresses, that we want to make sure that the election files are not corrupt. We also want to make sure that there's voting ID. I think this is something that we want to insist on because we want to make sure that the legal votes count. This is something that both Republicans and Democrats should agree on.
And they do.
And so that's why we feel that it's important for them to hear our side of the story, to be able to explain these election integrity laws before going forward and having them just simply cave in to the Soros-funded groups and to this pressure, of basically saying that these laws are bad for these states. I mean, they have the misinformation, which I think is very harmful for them to even be spreading.
Well, so education and conservatives standing up together. Mercedes Schlapp, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Hey, I'm Rob Finnerty. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please join the conversation in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe, too. Hit the bell icon to be alerted to breaking news. And remember, there's a whole lot more on Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news network. Newsmax TV, we're real news for real people.